Okay, let's get into this. Saddam Hussein. The name itself, it just conjures these images, doesn't it?
Mm,
A dictator, powerful, often brutal.
definitely. But the story of how he actually got there, how he built that absolute control in Iraq, wow, it's a fascinating story and pretty chilling in parts.
It really is. And we've got this source material, this Hindi-English narrative you shared, which gives us a unique perspective.
Exactly. It's got its own style, but it lays out those crucial building blocks, Saddam's early life, his climb.
So our mission today is to really unpack that, right? Look
Mhm.
at those early influences, the ideology, and honestly, the ruthless tactics he used from day one.
That's the plan, to dig into those formative years and trace that path.
Okay, so you, our listener, brought us this intense piece of history.
Yeah.
We're going to walk through it, try to understand what really shaped him and how he climbed so fast.
It's quite the ascent.
So with a figure like Saddam, I mean, where do you even begin?
Well, the logical place is always the beginning, isn't it? The narrative paints a picture of a really difficult start. Born in 1937, Alaja, poor village, serious hardship early on. His father died before he was even born.
Wow.
And his mother. The source mentions she struggled, possibly with mental health issues. So right away, you see this exposure to loss, instability.
That kind of start must leave a mark. Maybe feeds into, a need for control later on, kind of suspicion.
It very likely could have. It often does. That early environment can be incredibly formative.
And then there's this other key figure mentioned, his uncle, Karola Tulfa.
Ah, yes, absolutely critical. The source really emphasizes his influence.
How so?
While Tofu was a staunch nationalist, he seems to have really instilled this powerful ideology in young Saddam Arab unity, anti-Western feelings.
So not just casual talk. It became core to Saddam's thinking.
The narrative suggests it went deep. It's interesting, isn't it, how sometimes early hardship can make someone really grab onto a strong ideology like that. It offers answers, belonging, a clear us versus them.
That makes a lot of sense. Hardship meets ideology.
Yeah.
So it feels almost inevitable he'd get drawn into politics?
And he did. The
Ah,
Banth Party in the 1950s, according to the source.
right. The Ba'ath Party, what were they actually about? What was their platform?
Okay, so think of the Ba'ath Party as part of that bigger pan-Arab wave happening then.
Right.
The idea was to unite all Arab nations, get rid of foreign influence, build this shared identity. The Baathists specifically pushed for that unity plus a kind of socialism.
Socialism, too. Interesting mix.
Yeah, government having a strong role in the economy, aiming for more fairness. This combination, Arab nationalism and socialism, really resonated in that post-colonial era with all the economic struggle.
Okay, got it. So that's the political world he steps into.
Hmm.
And pretty quickly, he's involved in something, well, pretty dramatic. That assassination attempt in 1959.
Yes, on Prime Minister Qasim. A huge gamble.
And it failed.
It failed completely. And the source says Saddam was actually shot, wounded, had to flee Iraq.
Wow. That could have been the end right there.
Could have been. But instead, it seems like a turning point. The failure, the exile Syria, then Egypt, maybe it just hardened him, taught him about planning at the cost of mistakes.
And the source mentions he studied political science while in exile in Egypt.
Right. So he wasn't just lying low.
Doesn't sound like it.
No, seems like it was a period of intense study, strategic thinking.
Yeah.
The source suggests he was actively preparing, equipping himself with knowledge for when he could return and seize power.
So planning his comeback.
Yeah.
Quite a shift from being wounded and on the run.
A significant shift, yeah. He was waiting for his chance.
And that chance came in 1968. The Ba'ath Party coup was successful this time.
It was. And Saddam returns and, according to the source, climbs the ranks really fast within the new regime.
But here's a crucial detail the source points out. Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr was officially the president.
Right, on paper.
But the real power, because that was already with Saddam.
That's such a key insight into how power works, isn't it? Al-Bakr had the title, sure, but Saddam was maneuvering behind the scenes, gaining control of key parts of the party, and crucially, the security apparatus. That let him wield the real authority, build his base, set things up for his eventual takeover.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Real power isn't always the name on the door. It's who controls the force, the information.
Precisely. And one major tool for that was the Mukhabarat.
The intelligence agency. The source is pretty blunt about its role. Use this phrase, finding and killing all opposition. Har opposition ko dun kamar dia.
Stark language, yeah. And it wasn't just political opponents, was it?
No, the source says even people inside the party, if they were perceived as a threat. No one was safe.
And that philosophy the narrative attributes to him, either you're with me or you're not alive. Ya tumir satraho ya zinda mat raho. Chilling.
It really is.
The Muka bar became his terror machine, a huge network for eliminating any perceived threat. Imagine the climate of fear that creates.
Total suppression of dissent. It must have completely solidified his control.
Absolutely. Widespread fear does that. It crushes independent thought, creates deep distrust.
Classic authoritarian playbook, really. Use fear, use violence.
Yeah.
And this sets the stage for him taking the top job officially.
Exactly. In 1979, the source says he basically forces President al-Bakr to resign.
Just like that. And Saddam becomes president.
Just like that. And then comes that infamous speech, the one to the Ba'ath Party members.
Yeah, the source describes it like something out of a horror film. He announces some supposed conspiracy.
Publicly names people. Right there in the meeting.
Has them arrested on the spot. Some even executed then and there.
That's what the narrative describes. It wasn't just about power, it was theater. A horrifying public display of what happens if you even think about crossing him.
As the source says, the real beginning of his reign of terror. Sending a message.
An unmistakable message. Total intimidation.
So he's got this absolute grip on Iraq now. What's the next big move?
War. He initiates the war with Iran in 1980.
Right, the Iran-Iraq War. 8 years. Devastating. Why? What was the thinking?
Ambition, mostly. The source suggests Saddam saw a chance, with Iran in post-revolution chaos, to make Iraq the dominant regional power and himself the top Arab leader. Fill a power vacuum, you know.
But he miscalculated.
Seems like he massively underestimated Iran's resilience. It turned into this incredibly bloody, long, costly stalemate. Millions of casualties on both sides. Just devastating.
And it's one of those strange twists of history. The U.S. and the West, who later opposed him so strongly.
They sort of backed him then, didn't they? Implicitly, at least.
Yeah, because they opposed Iran more after the revolution. Realpolitik.
Absolutely. Shifting alliances based on who seems like the bigger threat at the time, even if your temporary ally is doing terrible things.
And the source doesn't shy away from those terrible things. The use of chemical weapons.
No, it mentions it clearly, not just against Iran, but against his own people.
Kurds. Halabja.
Yes, the Halabja massacre. Using chemical weapons on civilians. The source estimates 5,000 deaths there. It just underscores the sheer brutality, the utter disregard for human life.
It's a grim endpoint for this part of the story. Just shows the human cost of that kind of ambition, that ruthless consolidation of power.
So we've traced it from that difficult childhood, the nationalist influence through the political maneuvering, the exile, the coups.
The establishment of fear through the Mukhabarat, eliminating rivals.
To becoming the absolute, unquestioned, feared leader of Iraq. It's quite this trajectory.
Yeah. You, our listener, should now have a much clearer picture of those early forces, those choices, often violent ones, that put Saddam on that path.
Exactly. From those beginnings, he built this regime founded entirely on fear and control.
And looking at this early period, you really see it, don't you? How that unchecked drive for power, that deliberate cultivation of fear, it so often foreshadows bigger conflicts down the line, maybe even the eventual downfall.
It often does. History has shown that pattern.
The material we looked at today, it definitely hints at what's coming. Future clashes, especially it seems with the United States. That feels like a huge escalation from these first brutal steps to consolidate power.
It certainly set the stage for future confrontations. Makes you think about how those early actions, those foundations built on fear, can really set a nation on a dangerous course for decades.